I'm back today to share the next Wooble that I made. Today, it's Oishi the Sushi. I'm May, and this is May's Crochets. I'm a beginner crocheter sharing my learning to crochet journey, and one of the things I've been doing to learn how to crochet has been working my way through a whole bunch of the Woobles Learn-to-Crochet kits. I have videos on my channel where I walk through all of the previous Woobles that I've made. There's a whole bunch of them at this point. But today I'm here to share Oishi the Sushi. So let me show you the kit. Here's the front of the kit. There's Oishi. Look at him. So cute. That's how he's supposed to come out. And let me turn the kit around and show you. So just like all of the other Woobles kits, they come with absolutely everything you need to make the project. So yarn, step-by-step videos, pre-started piece, crochet hook, stuffing, plastic eyes, yarn needle, and online instructions. So let me show you how he came out. Doo-doo-doo! Hi! Look at that smile. So this is Oishi the Sushi. Okay, let's get close. Let me turn him around. Doon, 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 doon. I can turn him this way. Okay, Oishi the Sushi. Happy little sushi guy. So let's walk through it. This one was a little bit different from some of the other Woobles that I've done, which was fun to have a little change of pace. A lot of the Woobles are really like an egg-shaped body, and you like add some other little pieces on, like, you know, chicken wings or little fins or things like that, little fox ears. So in this case, it's a little bit different. You start with the white, which is the rice ball, and it is still, you know, somewhat egg-shaped, but it's a slightly different shape, and it's a little bit like more cylindrical, I guess, a little bit, but still pretty similar, I guess. So it walks you through the usual, starting with the pre-started piece of the magic ring, although I do it myself because I use a slightly smaller crochet hook, which I've talked about in other videos. But you do some like increasing and then a bunch of single crocheting, and then towards the bottom you have some invisible decreases. You place the safety eyes. In this case, it was a little bit different. So typically with sort of the egg-shaped pieces, you know, you end up placing the eyes kind of like in the middle of the body, like facing out, as opposed to in this case, you place them kind of right on the top because he's gonna face forward like this. So you place the safety eyes, you close up the bottom of the rice ball, and then you go ahead and embroider on the mouth. So again, the mouth is like right up top. It's like right between rounds, I guess 1 and 2, and round 1 is that magic ring, right between the eyes. So you do the mouth. I've done mouths like this before. There's like a little trick to the embroidery where you kind of go back to kind of catch that bottom spot to keep the mouth kind of in that shape. And I feel like mine's like a teensy bit off center. You know, in their example videos, it was also a little bit off center and looked a little different than this. It's hard to get it like perfect, but you know, it's part of the charm. So you do kind of finish up the rice ball, and then you move on to this yellow part, which is the egg, which is the tamago. So this is sort of that, like, it's a sort of that certain type of sushi where you have the rice ball and then that sort of the egg tamago, and then it's wrapped with the seaweed, the nori. Okay, so the yellow piece, the tamago, it is a little bit different, which was a kind of interesting experience for me. So you start by making a chain, and then you kind of crochet into half of the chain, and then you go back and crochet into the other half of the chain. So you're starting to kind of make like a V shape that you're then gonna like go up, and it's kind of an oval, I guess they say, and you're gonna crochet around it. But I've done before kind of the idea that you start with a chain and then you like crochet into the chain and then you just like keep going up. But this sort of chain, crochet into one side, go back and crochet into the other side was definitely a little bit different. I watched that part of the videos like really carefully to kind of, I think I might have even undone it and redid it at one point because I didn't get it totally right the first time, and it was a little bit tricky. So you kind of end up with, yeah, this sort of V shape that starts with the one chain, and then there's sort of like, instead of like a full like round, it kind of becomes a little bit of an oval round, but you end up with sort of a set of crochet stitches on the top of one side, and then like a little bit, and then a set of crochet stitches on top of the other side and a little bit. And so that becomes kind of like this oval. But it's just such an interesting way of like starting it. It was a little bit confusing to like be crocheting into kind of one side of the chain and then going back into the other. That was definitely something I had not done before. But effectively, you're making like a little, like I was thinking of it as like a pita pocket. You have sort of a little pocket, and then you're kind of like making it bigger and bigger and bigger as you go around. So round one, or I guess round one is the chain. Round two is this sort of situation where you crochet into one side of the chain and then the other. Round three, you start to actually go just all the way around as normal, but you do a little bit of increasing to make it a little bit bigger. And then most of the way up is just all single crochet. At that point, you do have a round, like it's truly round. I mean, it's an oval shape and not like a circle, but you're just kind of going around and around and around, building up this pocket from the bottom. So this is kind of how that comes out. Right in the middle is the chain, and then on each side of it is sort of rounds, is round two, kind of, let's see, it's like a little bit on top and a little bit on bottom, and then is round three, and then it's all just normal single crochet, kind of working your way up. So that was pretty interesting. Then at the very end, you do, I think, a little bit of decreasing, and then to close the pita pocket, you do, I guess it's called a whip stitch, where you just kind of go like in and out of each stitch, kind of around and around and around to seal the pita pocket. And they do have you put the whip stitch part in the back, because I guess it doesn't really look as good as the front. Mine looks a little bit funny. Somehow I have this little like piece that's like sticking out a little bit. I don't know how that happened, but not too bad. So yeah, so you close up your little pita pocket, you stuff it lightly, they said, and you close it up. And in looking at pictures of other people who did the same pattern, there's a big range in how much people stuff it. They do say lightly. It's kind of supposed to be like a little layer on top, and it's definitely not supposed to be too like big. So some people's, it's really very flat. They barely stuff it, and it's more like a pancake. And some people, it's a lot bigger. Mine like this little like egg pillow. Maybe I stuffed mine a little too much. Maybe I should have done a little bit less. But let's see. Let's look at the picture. So pretty good. Pretty similar. Yeah. What do you think? So sewing on then the egg piece to the rice ball was pretty interesting. They do specify that you don't want it to be like fully flat. Like you don't want to go all the way around, I guess. And have like the corners kind of sewn all the way down. You're not like literally going around every edge of the egg piece and sewing it onto the edge. You want the corners kind of sticking out a little bit. But they don't specify like what round or what stitch or anything like that to sew it on. It's more like use your judgment. And so, you know, I did the best I could. I feel like it's not like perfectly centered and straight. And I feel like that's because, you know, the way that the crochet stitches end up is there's sort of like a slant. And so to try to sew on, it's hard to see now that the nori's there, although technically I can kind of slide the nori off. We'll talk about that in a second. But to kind of crochet in a straight line all the way down, or to embroider, I should say, to sew in a straight line all the way straight down, you end up, if you're trying to go along the same sort of seam of stitches, you end up kind of slanting. And so I suppose to mitigate that, you could kind of move over at one point to try to keep it a little more straight. I think I actually might have done that on one of the sides, but tough to get it like really perfect. But this is all just real nitpicking. Like I think overall it looks great, and no one else is like looking at it as closely as I am. But you can see, like, if you look sort of straight on, it kind of slants off a little bit in kind of all the directions that you look at it. But you do have sort of these corners, let's see, sticking up and out, as opposed to like having it sewn, all the way down is what they were saying, not to do. Because really it does, in real life, it's like egg and then the tamago kind of goes on top like that. So you do that. And then last up is the nori, the seaweed. So this is done in black yarn. I thought that was kind of funny. Like maybe it should be dark green, though I guess seaweed kind of looks more black than green. And it'd have to be like a really dark green to be, realistic. Black yarn is really a challenge to work with. And they did point that out. They said, be sure to use good lighting, which is very, very true. Because it's really hard to see the stitches. So the nori is really just like a big long rectangle where you do a long chain and you single crochet back into it and into it and into it, a few rounds. I've done like versions of that before. What I was saying before is, different than the pita pocket where you do a chain and then you crochet in. But I've mostly done it in the service of making other things that then end up getting some type of shape. I feel like this might be the first time that I've done a true kind of shape that's all just chains or a chain and then a bunch of like rows of crochet. So you do the chain, you crochet back into it, and then you do a turn. The way they describe it, which I think is helpful, is it's really just like turning the pages of a book. You just like take the I think you chain one, you take the kind of full piece that you have on one side and you just turn it and your crochet hook is in the middle and then you just keep going. So I thought that was kind of a good way to describe it. I have heard them talk about that before, but this is the first time that I did kind of set like a straight. I think this is how you make like blankets and scarves and things like that in crochet. I just haven't done a ton of that because I've been really focused on this sort of amigurumi as opposed to like making things like scarves and blankets. But so you do that in the black yarn. Again, it's a little hard to see, so good light was important, but pretty straightforward. Just, a whole lot. I think it was like 34 stitches all the way across. So you end up with this long rectangle, and then they have you just basically wrap it around and then sew it together on the bottom. It's hard to even see here, which I guess is good. There it is. That's some better lighting. Again, you do a whip stitch, I think, to attach it together on the bottom. And they actually don't specify that you should attach the nori to the other two pieces. It just says you should like wrap it and sew it together. So technically you could sort of take the nori off and unwrap it. I myself I tried to secure it a little bit so that it wouldn't move around too much, so that it would stay kind of centered, but I didn't do it very much. So you can see like I can start to sort of take it off. But I suppose you could do that if you wanted. You could really like keep it as separate pieces. So you can take the nori like fully off and have just the rice ball and the egg piece. But yeah, I secured it a little bit through a few spots just to kind of try to keep it a little bit centered. Not perfect, but pretty good. So yeah, that was it. It was definitely a little bit of a different piece overall, with this idea that it's really like 3 full pieces that you attach. Very different from a lot of sort of the animals that I've made, where it's more like, like attaching ears and a tail and things like that. I showed my husband and he thought it was just really funny and cute. He said he feels like the kind of the foods that have smiley faces are like the funniest ones of the ones that I've made so far, which I guess kind of makes sense because like food, doesn't actually have smiley faces. But I also previously made a strawberry and the pineapple, and actually these all go together along with the sushi and the Woobles like fruit collection. Here's what the yarn wrapper looked like. So you can see the pineapple, the strawberries up there, the sushi, and then there's also an avocado. So I've made the strawberry and pineapple previously. I have previous videos about those ones. And I do also have the avocado, which I will make in the future and post a video about. The avocado is actually labeled as an intermediate kit versus every other kit I think I have and that I've done so far has been either beginner or beginner plus. So I'm interested to see what makes the avocado intermediate. But I think actually these 4 like pieces of food crochet kits all sort of go together in their food bundle. And Oishi the Sushi is one of them. So yeah, definitely very interesting. I always wonder if, which kits are really, really good for like true beginner crocheters. And I think this one could be fine. I think there's like a lot of interesting skills that you learn in this. You do get to learn sort of this long chain and crochet into it, which is how you make, I think, like blankets and scarves and things. Correct me if I'm wrong. But so that could be a good way to like practice just at a very small scale, those skills. And you do get the full like egg-shaped amigurumi, like whatever, single crochet, increase, decrease, all of that, and the safety eyes and the yarn. And then this, the tamago egg piece was definitely an interesting experience. Doing the like pita pocket thing, that was definitely new for me. So always looking to kind of learn new things, and this one did deliver on some things that I already knew and some new things, and coming out with this super cute little piece of sushi. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for keeping me company, and I'll see you next time. Bye.